Welcome to the WG podcast, formerly Due Diligence.
Yeah.
And we're on our second week of branding with our new jingle. Hope you enjoyed it. And
WG.
WG. WG.
I don't usually say WG. WG. We don't want to sing it too much. We need to practice that stuff.
Well, welcome to the WG podcast. And we're in our same cozy North Atlanta studios that you've come to know here near Chastain Park.
Cozy.
And as Steve Stone, our wonderful friend at Cumulus Media, just told you, I'm Jason Wieloch, and this is Lee Taylor. We are real estate experts. We're also Atlanta experts because we've been here combined 40 plus years, you and me.
Yeah.
Over 30 selling real estate, over 40 in Atlanta, living, working, loving this city.
You were born in 80 what?
85.
I got here in 88. And off and on, I lived in Dallas and then Saudi Arabia, then Dallas, but here.
Then we probably have lived here longer combined.
Yeah, it's close to 70-something years.
Of course, we've moved, come and go. I went to college. You did your thing. But bottom line is, we know Atlanta, and we're back here on the show. Passionate. And we're with the Wieloch Group at Compass, some of the finest and most unfiltered professionals in real estate.
Yeah, you got to be unfiltered right now in this market. And so it's a drag.
Well, Donald Trump told us that when you're in leadership, he's taught us that when you're in leadership, you don't have to always be buttoned up tight about it. You can say whatever. Now, we're not going to go, TMZ.
I'm looking at you like you're calling him a leader. Okay. Well, I guess he is. He's been appointed one.
He is an elected leader.
As it stands, when it comes to leadership, I'm a soldier who served under General Colin Powell. And Colin Powell has said some things you want to Google it about what leadership really looks like. And certainly there are models that Donald Trump doesn't necessarily follow. And I don't think John Maxwell, who wrote the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, would he'd probably agree with old Colin Powell,
Well, long story short is our team is awesome. It's fun, and we know what we're doing. Some of them are a little more shy to come on the show. We're working on that, folks.
Yeah. But we need their voices.
Lee and I are leading the way.
Two dudes.
So let's move into our new first segment, which is what the WG is up.
What the WG is up.
This week
what's up? Look
in Atlanta.
What's on my face, Jason?
Eyeglasses.
That's right. And guess where they were?
Where?
For 2 weeks, they were in my car on Memorial Drive at the body shop, Reed's Body Shop, best body shop in Atlanta since 1955, Jason.
Oh, yeah, out on Memorial there.
Right over there across from the Madison Yards.
That's right.
And Robbie Reed's been running that since his father started at 55. And it's a cool body shop. But, man, where are my glasses? And they've been sitting in the front because I had some body work to do, Jason, a little scuffle. Pickup truck on Piedmont Road.
Yeah.
So that's the update. I was so happy to be able to see. I couldn't even see,
texting and driving. Yeah. Showing real estate.
I wasn't texting and driving at the time. I was just sluggish.
Gotcha.
On the brakes.
Well, I think that being in real estate has been one of the few professions that has kept us sane because many people are stuck at home.
What's the WG up? What the WG is up with you?
Well,
JW.
I'm glad that your highlight was your glasses.
It's a big thing, man.
I was thinking about what I was just saying, which is that our profession lends to an elevated amount of social interaction that others don't, as well as being able to move about. Yeah. Many people are stuck at home.
That's a really good point.
Are we blessed to be able to move about and go see homes and talk? Yeah. We are constantly talking to new people because realtors, every deal is a new deal. Now, we don't always like who we have to talk to, but many times we do.
You've met a really cool, interesting dude the past week. I don't want to we'll keep it confidential, but the guy from New Jersey.
The guy,
what? Man. Wow. Just like gift, a sales gift given to you.
F this, F that, effing, let's do it. Let's write offers. Definitely a different approach than we have here in the South.
He sent you he sent you that image of somebody like rifling money off of their hand, right?
He did. It was a total, Jersey-esque move. And he would own that if he was on the show.
But that's
here.
what's wonderful about our business, that we get to manipulate our time to where we're constantly in front of people.
I'll tell you how I've taken advantage of being a realtor the last week. When you're in the when you're single, real estate provides an unusually awesome pipeline for meeting other singles. Why?
Oh yeah,
because we're in real estate.
JW,
in real estate, we're 1099. We're independent contractors, right? And we aren't all on the same team in brokerages. So it's not like a bunch of W-2 people working at Coke or UPS.
Right.
So it's kind of a conflict to meet and date in those environments. We're constantly cycling through new deals, meeting new people, and we don't have to see each other if we don't want to. We're kind of off in our own worlds doing our business. So I had the pleasure of taking this Harry Norman agent, and I'm not going to say who she is. We'll call her SD. For purposes of this podcast.
And this is someone
she's just this adorable, cute Harry Norman agent, and we've attempted to do deals. So I asked her to lunch last week because I wanted to, get to know her a little bit better. And I'm trying to get her to go on a date with me now. So if she's listening,
I think this is certainly with our audience of millions, this can be arranged, I'm sure.
So I'm asking her on the air, when are we going to house?
That's powerful. I'll say that if Harry Norman were alive, he'd
adorable.
Be proud of you. If Harry Norman were alive, he'd be going, good for you, JW.
I pointed out to her that she might be the youngest girl at Harry Norman.
Hey, fun fact. Harry Norman is one of the founders of the FMLS.
Really?
Yeah, FMLS was founded by Mr. Who was our past senator who's just stepped down?
No, Johnny Isaacson.
Johnny's father was Northside Realty, Harry Norman, and then Buckhead Brokers, who I can't remember the principal there, but those three formed the FMLS.
Well,
in the 80s or 70s or whatever.
Anyway, long story short, real estate can provide a really great dating pipeline. I don't know if it's always going to be Harry Norman, but...
And you can talk about nerdy things like FMLS history that Lee Taylor knows about.
That's true.
Yeah, don't do that.
That's the kind of stuff.
Do that. You need better game than that.
That doesn't lead to a second date. And I'm going to get my advice in that space somewhere different. You continue to unimpress me with dating advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So any Atlanta news or notes that you can
I can't really say anything other than, we're the fourth largest or fourth fastest gentrifying city in the country, Jason.
Well, that's our main topic today, folks. It's what you came to hear. And you probably were wondering when you saw gentrifying, what are these two knuckleheads going on about? And that's really what we're here to talk about today, is a subject that has been, it's like one of those dirty words, right? It's not a word you can't say, but it's a sensitive word. It means different things to different people, but I'd say it has more of a negative connotation than it does a positive connotation. And the reality is that gentrification isn't all bad or all good.
Right.
That's kind of my view of it. It's about, because in many respects, you sent me a great article a couple weeks ago. You don't not want gentrification, and here's why, right? There's a lot of reasons. So,
and it doesn't have to mean hipsters, posers.
Do you think I'm a hipster?
Avocado boutiques. What else? Wine bars.
Yuppies.
Right. And at the same time, when I read that article, I sent it to Shay Embry, who put a wine bar at Cascade Heights. And she put a wine bar on the west side, first one. And she thought that was very funny because they're talking about hipsters. And she's in her lovely 60s and has a wine bar, hipster wine bar. She moved from Decatur to the west side. And first thing she did now it's not gentrifying, because guess who comes to the whole neighborhood meets there for meetings?
Who?
Okay. The neighborhood is now made a gathering place. She started a neighborhood gathering place. There's other things in that neighborhood, but gentrification doesn't have to mean an exclusive.
Well, I used the word hipster a minute ago, but do you view me as a yuppie?
You? In the classic sense of what an 80s yuppie was, the young urban professional, yeah.
That's kind of the term they use to describe it's not just hipster. I think yuppie is the more common term.
Young urban professional. I consider myself, I'm 55. I think I'm still young. And that means relative to what is urban, what is young, and what is professional.
Well, so I'm gonna sort of kick you off with a stat you threw in our agenda, which is that Atlanta is one of the top gentrifying cities in the U.S.
Yep,
according to the Federal Reserve. I was unaware of that. I knew that Atlanta was a rapidly gentrifying city, but I kind of viewed it as something every large city was going through. But apparently, we still stand out amongst what's really a national trend. So, tell the listeners what puts Atlanta in that top 5, or why have we arrived at being in that top 5?
I'd say we've been there a while. And if you look at this map, Jason, I'll just share it with you. But, hey, I can put it up on the screen, can't I? Look at that, y'all. Go here. It's City of Atlanta has it. The gentrification pressure areas, you've seen highly developed areas. You could say an area like Inman Park or Druid Hills has been gentrified eons ago, really, in the early 20th century.
Right.
Okay. So
we're in another stage of gentrification.
Right. Yeah. If you look at Buckhead as an example, there have been examples in Buckhead where just the baseball park at the corner of Farr and Piedmont used to be
Frankie Allen,
hundreds of homes, all black neighborhood. And you got to look back at Atlanta history to realize what were all black neighborhoods versus all white neighborhoods. And that did exist in the 50s and until the early 60s. That related to who swam at what swimming pool, who went to what school. They were that exclusive. So the early days of gentrification in Atlanta, probably, if you really want to measure it, are certainly historic, post-Civil War, but the real gentrification that you can modernize today, since I was alive, born in 65, really did come around after the Civil Rights Act.
Well, I'd say gentrification as we're seeing it today sort of started post-Olympics.
It's certainly post-Olympics. We had a spike in Atlanta.
There's various stages of gentrification. And Atlanta has a long history of repositioning of neighborhoods, a lot of it more racially motivated in the period you're describing.
Yeah.
Today, I think a lot of it is financially and location related. Now, it ends up being a racial issue in many cases because the folks that are being pushed out a lot of times are mostly black, whereas many of the people moving in are white. So it indirectly becomes a racial issue, but it's happening more so because people of affluence are fascinated with living close in town.
Yeah.
And, whether it's
in Georgia real estate,
the Beltline, public transportation, in-town living is just back.
And Georgia real estate, as biggest theme on our podcast, the old one, due diligence. We always talked about We always talked about how valuable Georgia land is compared to the other metropolitan cities around the country, and why we're so popular. So these in-town neighborhoods, now even post-Olympics, post-Beltline development, which really began in the 2012-ish time frame, has spiked dramatically, Jason. Everything from Midtown down to Ormwood Park has jumped in value nearly 20 to 40%, depending on which street you're on and what your borders are from Memorial Drive to DeKalb, right?
Going back to my first question, why are we currently in the top 5? Is it just land value? Because there's a lot of cities across the Sun Belt that have cheaper land.
Well, it comes down to what the AJC said, is that the gentrification brings changes, both good and bad. And what Atlanta really has is the demand for technology jobs and the demand for employment has put pressure on closeness and proximity to two things: downtown and the airport. And then when you take the types of jobs, and everything's changed a lot. This year is a big game changer for how we relate to home. However, being close into Atlanta is going to continue to be popular when prices are still in the 300s and 400s to be near one of the best major metropolitan cities in the world. And you can be near the biggest airport in the country within 15 minutes if you live in town Atlanta, 25 minutes at the most from Buckhead. So,
I theorize that gentrification has happened at such a strong rate because we had so many factors in the last 100 years that led to it being so prominent. Prominent's the wrong word, but prevalent now, because we had such a reorganization over the late 20th century of where blacks and whites lived, separated in many respects. And so we're kind of having that go in reverse, if you will.
But
right? Would you say that speaks a lot to why our rate of gentrification is higher than some other places?
We've had a profound transformation demographically, physically, and culturally. Suburbanization, that's the flight to the Smyrnas and Tuckers and for that matter, McDonough's and Bufords of the world. Rising prices, and that's about value. I mean, we have a lot we have a city that people want to live in, a booming economy, and we have the city too busy to hate was one of the things I mentioned in our notes. The double-edged sword of gentrification, as we entitled this podcast, is about that. We're too busy to hate, but we're still taking, in some cases, I got an article from my hometown of Greenville, South Carolina, the erasure is the word they used of black neighborhoods. And that did truly happen in the 20th century.
I say unintended consequences is what it is.
That's
right?
one way to put it. And here it is, the people moving into the city over the 1990 time frame, there was a black percentage, the percentage of black folks in the city was 67% in 1990. It dropped to 54% in 2010. And then right now, I don't have the numbers, but we gained 22,763 white residents between 2000 and 2010, 5,142 Asians, 3,095 Hispanics, and the black population decreased by 32,000. That's dramatic. So that word is powerful, gentrification. When you think about, there are people who lost homes, neighborhoods, streets, blocks. And a lot of it, I've always referred to this book, it's time to refer to it again. White Flight, Atlanta and the Making of Modern Conservatism is a really good history book. I recommend it to realtors. I recommend it to people who love Atlanta. And you can learn a lot about the history of these neighborhoods and how the conflicts have caused long, long, deep wounds. Can I give you an example really quick?
Yes. I want to get back to like the double-edged sword, which is what we're here to talk about.
But it's a personal example of the double-edged sword. It really is. It's a good one.
Yeah.
So I moved to Inman Park in 1998. I got involved in the public safety committee. I got to be VP of public safety. I sat on the board when we became a historic neighborhood. We helped form the laws and all that. It was a really interesting time. I moved to Kirkwood in 2004. Somebody told somebody that I was the VP of public safety at Inman Park, and word got out, and they said, hey, I want to take you around Kirkwood. I'll show you around, show you what's going on. Next thing I know, I become one of the newspaper delivery guys in Kirkwood, the Kirkwood neighborhood newsletter. And this guy, old guy, Earl, really cool. If Earl Williams is listening, God bless you, Earl. Cool dude, lived in the neighborhood for years, president, NPU president, very, very cool. Green as they get. Green, hugs trees. Love this guy, and really able to relate to anyone. We go into Langford's Barber Shop, the oldest established licensed business in Kirkwood. It's across the street from the second oldest, the mortuary. And all these new things are happening. Guess what's happening that probably spring of 2006? Kirkwood Spring Fling. So Earl, the hippie dude, me, and I walk in. We're both the coolest guys. We walk into Langford's Barber Shop, and the only two white dudes in there. And we say, hey, here's our newsletters for the stack. He goes, oh, let me look at it. Mr. Langford looks at it. He goes, look at all these advertisers in here for this spring fling. How come you didn't ask me to advertise? All we were doing was delivering the paper. But the consideration of that neighborhood association, just pick up the phone and call every business in Kirkwood.
Right. The one, hey, we've been here forever.
It's the biggest lesson I've learned.
That's really powerful. I think though that, and we have to continue to be cognizant of that if we're gentrifying neighborhoods, right?
Yeah.
And I also think though that it's very clear to people why it's bad.
Yeah.
I think there's a double-edged sword though, which is there are positives to all of this, right? So what are the reasons we don't not want gentrification?
Right. Yeah, and that's another part of, what I was trying to talk about with these notes. So let's stay on my notes. I mean, we've kind of gone over the general, but gentrification is, what I see here, Southeast Atlanta, Northwest Atlanta, Southwest Atlanta, and South Atlanta. Those four neighborhoods would be the most vulnerable to rapid gentrification here in 2020 and to 2030, let's say, this next 10 years. And those neighborhoods, you can just look around the Beltline and see how those are all being impacted because there's so much money coming from all over the world into Georgia, and they're buying dirt. And many of them have bought tax liens. Many of them have bought sheriff's liens. I learned about the Atlanta Land Bank last month.
Are you avoiding my question, son?
What was the question?
We all know the negatives of gentrification.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we want to also explain, not we all know, but it's more clear to people why it's a bad word. What's the double-edged sword? What is positive about gentrification? Why do we not want to stop it? There are reasons that there brings lots of benefits.
Yeah. Well, this is the genesis of we talk about gentrification all the time, but you said, what really is the crux of it? There's an article that came out in the Journal, Wall Street Journal, on August 7th, and it's Gentrification is America's Best Hope. And they looked at cities that aren't necessarily as big as Atlanta, but they talked about two big things that gentrification brings? Eds and meds. Eds are the colleges and the education centers that you could take it from the trade level all the way up to the graduate level. And from there, the medical universities, and from there, the legal university, you name it. Eds and meds have taken employment and made employment happen in cities all over the country that weren't there. Meds is, for our biggest med is Pill Hill. You know where Pill Hill is, right? That's up at Piedmont Hospital, no, Northside Hospital, and all the medicine that's around there. Now, that wasn't there 50 years ago. Okay.
I still am having a hard time, my friend, wrapping my mind around the answer.
The jobs are good. So these cities that have these jobs with eds and meds, and we are one of the biggest cities in the world with eds and meds.
So you think eds and meds is the reason the gentrification is good?
It's good. It says it. I'll read you from here some of the highlights of my article I read.
I think there's let's more
sort of comes
general,
with that are bars and restaurants and things that
neighborhood
feed these
specific.
well-employed people that work at the eds and meds. Get it? And the pharmaceutical reps who call on the doctors that each make $200 a year.
Now I'm feeling you, man.
That's what I'm saying. So these drive the success of cities like Atlanta. But other cities, my hometown, Greenville, South Carolina, same thing, only on a micro level compared to
Atlanta.
And by the
way, I'm not asking you because I don't know, because I know the answer and I'm trying to pull it out of you. I'm asking you because it's easy to look at it through, gentrification feels good because I get the nice wine bar and I get the cool restaurant and my neighborhood's cool and I moved into it. But like there has to be societal benefits to gentrification. And I'm guessing that the economics of it are that even those who are already there in some cases are benefiting.
I'm going to guess that Emory employed maybe 4,000, 5,000 people in 1965. I bet they employ 40 to 70,000 today in their wide systems, the healthcare system particularly. So take those jobs and how many yoga classes do they take? How many baristas do they tip? That's gentrification and how it makes things go around. It generates economy.
Why is it good for the neighborhood that was already there before?
That's a big question.
I think that's what I'm trying to get to with you. Because
that's about equitable community reinvestment versus gentrification. Because there's some neighborhoods where you can look at equitable community reinvestment and point to it in other cities. Atlanta is not doing it that well, honestly. And I can look at the neighborhood I spend a lot of time in with my real estate builders is Pittsburgh and Mechanicsville. And I know that there are people clinging to the history of those great neighborhoods. You can read about that history online. You can go to Archive Atlanta, which is a great podcast, and learn about new stuff every week in Atlanta history. Main thing is those neighborhoods are clinging. Some people are really clinging to it. There's also abject poverty, boarded up houses, and absentee ownership from around the world, from Canada to China, that own neighborhood. So what are they doing for that neighborhood? Nothing.
Right. So in a sense, everything has a benefit and a price. And that's one of the things that I was just thinking on when you said it, which is a lot of these neighborhoods, there's unused spaces. There in many cases, homes deserted left and right. There's a level of depression that isn't outweighed by, I guess, the negatives, if you will.
The other piece is the neighborhoods that are succeeding have tight neighborhood associations, good relationships with their MPU, and aren't the victims of really bad government mismanagement. And admittedly, Mechanicsville and Pittsburgh, with federal crime and justice programs, failed miserably. And the crime and true injustice issues in some cases to people who are residents of homes, and the way things with zoning was done, and just terrible. That's the legacy that has to be kind of reconstructed. And I think Kirkwood has done a good job with it. And it took guys like Earl and I to come back to the neighborhood board and say, you better be calling on the barbershop and the mortuary who've been here for 80 years if you want to have a successful spring fling.
I think to sort of round this discussion into form, because we don't have much time left, the double-edged sword needs to be brought together for a solution for everybody. And unfortunately, everything is going to have a cost always. There's not one decision, or whether it's political or local, whatever, that is made that somebody doesn't feel like they weren't heard. You can even redistricting of schools is another example of that, right? It's just not everybody's going to be happy. But what we have to attempt to do is find solutions where the neighborhoods are revitalized and end up being a better place to live, but how do we include those who were there in as part of that? How do we keep them from being totally kicked out and not able to remain? How do we make this a collective experience?
Well, and that's there's conflict out there in the gentrification world. Okay, and there are people who talk about gentrification on an almost daily basis. That's their thing. Okay, and I wanted to say about affordable housing and things like the NPU system and how they do expedited reviews and things like that that can make affordable housing more affordable. Okay, and those kind of issues are really where being inclusive and helping everyone get something out of it instead of moving people away from their neighborhoods and homes. The whole idea of that conflict, then you go like, well, who's home when there's a squatter in a Canadian's house that they've owned for 30 years and all they do is pay taxes on it? And that does exist.
Yeah, it's not just one blanket answer for that.
And I'm not making fun of Canadians, but there are people who, absentee owners of Atlanta real estate, who bought tax liens, and some of them have held them and done nothing with them.
Yeah,
that's a conflict. You don't see that in Inman Park.
There's a lot of benefits.
You don't see that in Inman Park. So
sorry, Canada. We think you're very nice.
We got to pick on the Canadians.
All right. Well, we're out of time on this, Lee. It's a subject that probably takes a much larger discussion, but we wanted to touch
I'm glad you talked about it.
on essentially there's positives and negatives to everything. And I felt that it was a good idea to present not only things that are challenges, but why it is good. Gentrification can be really great for cities. And I thought it was interesting that Atlanta was in the top 5 in terms of
speed
of gentrification nationally. So we're going to keep tabs on this subject. In the meantime, we've got to go. And the WG podcast, we're happy to have you on here. And not only are we real estate experts at the Wieloch Group of Compass, we have a massive national network of realtors in all the major cities. So if you have a friend in another city who needs the very best professionals, or if you are moving away from Atlanta somewhere else, we can help you connect with them. And it's not because of them buying ad space with us. It's because we literally have vetted the very best in these major markets. So that's part of the value we're here to bring, is connecting you with the very best in our profession. And of course, you're locally, you know who to call. It's us.
It's us, baby.
With that being said, Lee, it's been a pleasure being with you here on the podcast. And we look forward to seeing you next week on the WG podcast.
The WG.